This morning is Brother Trent, and he's asked us to read from Joshua chapter 24, verse 14 to 18. And his title is Choices. The title of his message is Choices. Joshua chapter 24, verse 14 to 18. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your anchors worshipped beyond the Euphrates river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose from yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Ephrathite or the gods of the Amorites in those lands and are living land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Then the people answered, far be it from us to forsake the Lord, to serve other gods. It was the Lord our God Himself who brought us and our parents up out of Egypt, from that land of slavery, and performed those great signs before our eyes. He protected us on our entire journey and among all the nations through which we traveled. And the Lord drove out before us all the nations, including the Amorites who lived in the land. We too will serve the Lord because He is our God. Brother Trent.
Good morning, everyone. um, just put a plug in that I forgot about, which is Fall Day is next week, right? Always good to come to Fall Day. So why aren't you all cheering that I said yes, Fall Day? It's gonna be great. The next one's always better than the one before it, I think. And you also have to remember that Sue and I can't do this forever. Mainly Sue can't do this forever. So enjoy it while you can, because someday, who knows, it might stop. Yeah, someday we might have Fall Day in Jerusalem. It might be called something else, like the ingathering or. All right, so let's get to this topic, choices, and verses that Brother Robert read. How many of you have those in your house somewhere? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Yeah, a lot of people do. I thought we did, but I looked around and I couldn't find it. So maybe we haven't made that choice yet. No, I think we have. I did find some other ones that I didn't even know were there. But it's like the fruits of the Spirit. I thought, I should read this more often. But those kind of things we like to remind ourselves. Things like Joshua said in this passage, that we have to make decisions. And I think that's what life is all about. That's what the Bible tells us. I think all these examples in the Bible are telling us exactly that we have to make choices, that there's decisions we have to make every day. Some of them are really important, or at least we think they are. I mean, our jobs, where we live, we think those things are pretty important. And some may seem unimportant. Like we get up in the morning and we decide which way to go to work. Most of the times we have a routine, and it's the same thing every day. But sometimes it isn't. And sometimes we may decide to go a different way because we hear that traffic is bad or whatever. And then we may get to work and find out that there was an accident on our usual way, and we think, I wonder if I was spared some kind of accident or injury because I chose a different way. And even your choice of food, like sometimes I come home from work and Sue says to me, "What do you want, broccoli or cauliflower?" Every time I say I don't care, you know, and I think one time I said I'll take broccoli. We don't have any. Oh, no, that didn't really happen. So but those kind of choices, they seem unimportant to me anyway. I don't care really, unless we had broccoli every night for 5 days in a row, then I might care. But for the most part, I don't care. But who knows, maybe that would be an important decision at times. Maybe we find out sometime that broccoli was tainted, that a shipment of broccoli had come in from South America and it was tainted, and we'd be glad we chose cauliflower. But some of those things we don't know. Some of them might seem unimportant, and they might still be important, but we just don't know. So as I said, the Bible is filled with people that make choices, and that's kind of what it's all about. People that make good choices and bad. And these are all there for our help, right? They're all there so that we can make better choices in our lives. Who here has ever made a choice that they've regretted? Who has made a choice twice for the same thing that they've regretted? How are we so stupid? I mean, you know, there's times when, and that's maybe the problem with alcohol, and I would say it's not a big problem for me, but who knows, maybe it could be someday. But I know I've had friends when I was in college that would come down to visit me, and they would go to a party or something and drink too much, and they'd be totally sick, like spending their whole time in the bathroom, being sick. And I'm sure they regretted drinking too much, but that did not stop them from drinking the next weekend, right? It was a bad choice, but they're going to make that bad choice again and again. And sometimes I think we're like that as well. We make bad choices and we say, that was stupid of me. That was a wrong decision. And yet, when it comes up again, somehow we think McDonald's is the right choice. You may have gotten an upset stomach last time, but yeah, I'll go there again, try again. And those are silly little examples, but certainly we can understand how we do have these choices every day. And again, we're not going to talk about the story of Joshua there, but except that he has a very wise advice there when he says, I don't know what you're going to do about serving gods, but as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. He says, because really, that's the only choice. So this morning, since I'm talking about choices, I had to choose who to talk about. And I chose Lot for today. the nephew of Abraham. And I chose him mainly for my benefit, and I hope it's for yours as well. So we're going to look at his life a little bit. So let's turn to Genesis 13. This isn't the first place that Lot is mentioned. It's told that his father has died, and Abraham is pretty much watching over him. He's taken Lot with him into the land of Canaan. And now in Genesis chapter 13, they have just come back from Egypt because there was a famine in the land, so they went down to Egypt, and a lot of strange things happened down there. You could maybe question some of Abraham's choices in that case, but we're not talking about him, we're talking about Lot. So they come back from Egypt, and they had some strange experiences, mainly caused by Abraham's not claiming Sarah as his wife. But when they come out of Egypt, they're rich, pretty much, and maybe they had a lot when they were going down, but they have even more, it seems like, when they come back. And Lot shares in that wealth. And Lot is seeming to be more and more independent of Abraham. He has his own household, and now they both have so much stuff, so many cattle and livestock, that they can't live together. They have so much stuff. So in verse 8, Abraham says to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen." And we can maybe remember what happens after that. He says, the whole land is in front of us. I'm going to let you choose where you want to live, and I will go the other way. And then, we won't have any strife anymore. So this is the first choice that Lot has, a first one that we know of. This is a big choice for him. Maybe doesn't realize it, but it is a big choice. And Abraham's giving it to him. Abraham says, it's too hard for us to live together. Our herdsmen are fighting each other, so let's separate. So what does Lot choose? Tell me what he chooses. He chooses, a nice area. So let's read what he chose. Lot, this is verse 10. Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, so we get a little editorial there that this land looked great because it wasn't destroyed yet, right? So he looks down there, and it says it was like Egypt even, where they just came from. And so Lot says, I like this, so I'll choose that valley. And you can just picture him looking out over the valley, and it looks nice. Everything's green, and he thinks, oh, my cattle will do well there. So what's wrong with this choice? Well, maybe nothing. Maybe you can think of some things that might be wrong with this choice. For one, I was thinking, well, why wouldn't he say to Abraham, no, listen, you're my uncle, you've been taking care of me, it's your choice. Why would you give me first choice? Whatever you don't want is what I will pick. So he could have said that. That might have been a good option. But I think the main thing that was wrong with his choice is what's wrong with many of my choices. And that is that he chose by sight, what his eyes saw and what he thought would be good for himself and his family and all the flock. And he did not choose by faith. Right? I think the right thing would have been to pray about it. And again, I'm bringing this up because I think that's maybe the problem in my life as well. Not that I have to pray whether to go down Route 53 or some other route, but maybe even that would be a good idea. I think the point is that, you know, if they had prayed, if both of them had prayed together, Abraham and Lot, maybe God would have said, you know, that land looks nice, but don't go there. Neither one of you. I don't want either one of you to go there because something bad's going to happen to that area. Because right in this chapter it says, so Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, while Lot dwelt among the cities of the valley, and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. That'd be good to know, I think, before you moved somewhere, that God considered them wicked, like great sinners, it says here. So I think even before Sodom was destroyed, even while Lot was choosing that area, whether he knew it or not, there was a bad place to be. But he chose it because it looked good. So there he was in Sodom. And again, you might say, well, how is he to know? Well, there's always a way to know, right? You could find out for yourself, or you could pray about it. And of course, I'm advocating that. That is going to be the main point this morning. Pray about these things all the time. And it appears that he didn't. And I'm not going to paint Lot as a bad person because he isn't. The Bible says so, and in Hebrews it said, it vexed Lot's righteous soul that these people, or that he lived in this area and these people didn't change. So he's not a bad person. He did make a bad choice, and he seems to make other bad choices as time goes on here. All right, the next time we hear about Lot is when he is taken captive, and that happens in the next chapter. In chapter 14, we have this battle with the kings of that very valley where he settled in. They decide that they are not going to pay tribute anymore to the kings of the east. The kings of the east have been, it says, exacting tribute from them for 12 years. And they said, well, we've had enough. We're not paying anymore. So the kings of the east come and say, well, yes, you are. So they do battle with all these kings, including the king of Sodom. And they win. I think there was one interesting thing in that chapter that it just mentions. It says in chapter 14, verse 10, now the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits, and as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled to the mountain. So just a little thing, like when Lot was looking over that valley, it looked great, but here's a little blemish right in that valley. There's bitumen pits, and this happened to be the downfall of some of the people that were fighting in the battle. It says even some of the kings lost their lives because of those pits. So those little things are lurking in what looked like paradise. He said, the other thing Lot said about that valley, it looked like it was the garden of the Lord. Well, but you got these pitfalls in there, right? You already figured that out a little bit from this battle. Anyway, I don't think Lot probably participated in the battle, but he was swept up when the kings conquered the land. Abraham somehow stayed out of all of this. I don't know if it was because he lived in a different area or he maybe just paid the tribute that they were asking. I don't know, but he was not involved in the battle that happened there, and I don't think Abraham would have sided with the kings of the valley there. So Abraham is left out of it, but he finds out that Lot was taken. So he rounds up a small army. He goes and he defeats this huge army and brings his nephew back. And all of the things that were taken, it says Abraham slaughtered them. He slaughtered the king of the east and his army and brought back all the stuff. So I think, and it doesn't say this, but I think Lot has another decision to make at this point. Now, do I go back with these kings who made this stupid decision to fight the king of the east, or do I do something else? Do I get out of this place? Because I'm starting to see this place is rotten. Does he say that? Well, evidently not. He stays in Sodom, and we don't know what he's doing for that amount of time until the story comes up again. And that comes up in chapter 19, chapters 18 and 19, when this is the part I know I really need to pay attention to, because now Lot is deep into a situation caused by bad choices, I think. And maybe he didn't know they were bad to begin with, but now he's got choice after choice. And, you know, you would think he would have made the decision, I got to get my family out of this place, no matter what the cost. It's worth it to get my family out of Sodom. But he doesn't make that choice. He's still there. And in fact, he's sitting in the gate, which seems to make you think that he has some position within the city. So 3 angels first stop by Abraham's place. And I think that's interesting as well, because Abraham is not going to be caught up in this destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. There's a bunch of cities that are going to be destroyed in that whole valley. The Dead Sea is going to be formed after all this destruction happens. And Abraham's not going to be near it because I think it's because of his faith. His faith has directed him his whole life and kept him out of there. It isn't that Abraham didn't have any problems in his life, but he avoided this life and death situation by always being faithful to God, asking what he should do. And he was always guided by God. But we have no knowledge of Lot doing the same thing. So Lot's down there, and Abraham, when the 3 angels stop by his tent and tell him that he's going to have a child, for one thing. And then they say, well, should we tell him what's going to happen? And it always seems odd to me, of course, God knows what's going to happen to Sodom and Gomorrah. But I think it's for our sakes that this conversation is taking place, that God says he's going to send angels there to see how bad they are. If the cry that has gone up to him is as bad as the people make it out. And we know, again, that God knows what's going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, but I think it's for the benefit of Lot, actually. So the angels stop by at Abraham's place and they tell him what's going to happen in Sodom, and Abraham questions them about, are there no righteous people there? And we know that famous thing where he gets down, if there's 10 righteous, would you still save it? And the angels say yes. And so we don't know what happened to the third angel, but 2 show up in Sodom. And now this is a thing that I like I'm saying, I have to pay close attention to, because this is like Lot's last chance. So the angels come, and we know what happens right away. Like, Lot welcomes them into his home, and then the people of the city come to his door and try to abuse these angels. And so they knock on his door. They said, bring out those men that are with you. And I think at this point then we have, I think Lot is in denial of how bad things are. And maybe he just thinks, I can't do this because this is where I've invested my whole life. And maybe he's tried to help these people and convince them. But he says, I don't want this. I think he's saying to himself, I don't want this place to be destroyed. But these men, they appear to be men, but they're really angels. And they come into his house and say, look, this is a bad place. We're going to destroy it. And I just picture him trying to say, no, it's not that bad. I mean, these people can be convinced. And then all the people come to his door, and I think by this time he knows who these men are that are visiting him. And he says to the people, no, I'm not going to throw them out. He says, take my daughters instead of them. And I thought, boy, you get to the point where you're saying things like that. Take my daughters instead. And it seems like a light would go on in your head. Boy, this place is bad, But still he lingers, right? He lingers. It says that the angels kept urging him to leave. They said the place is going to be destroyed and you don't have any time. You have to leave. You can't pick up things. Whoever wants to go, but you cannot stay around here anymore. So he still stays there. I'm not sure what he thought was going to happen. Maybe he thought, if I stay here, then they won't really destroy it, because why would they destroy me with these people? And maybe he thought, I can stay here and they'll think twice about destroying it, because the angels had said that we are going to see what the city's like. But of course they knew, and I think the whole thing that happened with the people at his door and stuff were for his benefit, that he should see how bad the city really was. And yet he still could not leave. So we know the angels took him by the hand and said, let's go. And I think that's why there were multiple angels there, just so they could take them by the hand and they could take their daughters by the hand, and off they go. Pretty much being dragged out of the city, and then the angels say, don't look back, because it'll be bad for you if you look back. And we know that his wife did look back. She still evidently longed to be there, and she was destroyed or changed, guessing she just got rained on by all this stuff and became a pillar of salt. So that was the lesson about Lot. Like several choices, and by the end, he just could not get out of it, right? He could not change his mind to think, this is so bad that I have to leave. The things are so bad that God's going to actually destroy this place in a fantastic event, a catastrophic event that the whole area, I'm sure, saw. They saw the smoke going up from the destruction of that whole valley. So there was only death there, and yet he stayed. Now, I think that, as I said, there's good lessons for us. And some of it is, if we make bad choices, how do we get out of them? Sometimes we make one after another. We make one bad choice and we think, oh, this is how I'll fix that. I'll make another bad choice. And like I say, I think almost all of us have an event in our life there we say, I wish I never did that. That was a mistake, and it has caused great problems in my life. And yet somehow we cling on to these things. I think there's a good lesson from the life of David in 1 Chronicles chapter 21. And David had made a few mistakes, and we know about the mistakes he made in his life. He made some bad choices in his life, and in this chapter he evidently makes another one. I think it suited God's purpose at the time, but David said at the start of the chapter that he was going to number Israel, and it was a bad thing for him to do, and people warned him against it and said, don't do it. And I don't even understand exactly why that was bad or what he was up to. And I think some people say, well, he was trying to tax the people and he shouldn't have been doing that. But one thing it does say is that God was angry with Israel, and he used this occasion to punish them. So at the time then, God said to David, I'm going to punish Israel. And David was very sad about it. He said, I shouldn't have numbered them. Don't take this out on them. And God said, oh, yes, I am. So he said, there's three things. I'm going to give you a choice of three things, and they're all bad. They're all bad things that are going to happen to Israel. David said, was it not I who gave command to number the people? It is I who have sinned and done very wickedly. But these sheep, what have they done? Let thy hand, I pray thee, O Lord my God, be against me and against my father's house, but not the plague upon the people. But God said, yes, I am. So he gave him three choices. And like I say, they were all three bad. So when God says, okay, which do you choose? David said, I'm putting it in your hands. I'll take the one that you pick. And I think that's a good thing for us to remember when we get deep into our little problems that we have created and made bad choices. And God says, I'm giving you 3 choices or however many choices. Which one do you pick? And we should always say, you pick for me. Because the reason I got into this mess is because I didn't let you get involved. So we should always say, you pick. So God does pick, and he destroys many of the people, but then it says God is merciful and kind, and he stops. And I think that's a good message for us. Not to get deeper and deeper, but to say, okay, God, pull me out of this. You pick the method to pull me out. And God will do that for us. Now, sometimes we think, well, we know pretty well. I think when I was younger, I knew everything. I knew what I should be doing. I knew what other people should be doing, and I was willing to tell them what they should be doing. And a lot of that was based on what I thought was right and my own wisdom. And I don't think that way so much anymore. I think in Ecclesiastes 3, and we don't have to look this up, if you remember, Solomon says there's a time and season for all these things. There's a time to kill, and there's a time, well, I'm going to get them all wrong, so time not to kill, time to make peace, a time to sow and a time to reap. All these things, he says, there's a time for each one of them. And I think the big issue with us, and there's a verse afterwards in there, I guess I should read it, Ecclesiastes chapter 3. So he goes through this whole list. It's a time to kill and a time to heal. So that was one of them. He says in that chapter, in verse 11, he has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's mind, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. So I always puzzled over that verse a little bit. He's put eternity into our minds, but he doesn't, not so that we know the beginning from the end. And I think that was the whole point of his saying there's a time for all these things, because we have no idea when those times are most of the time. Do you know when the right time is to kill someone? I mean, I don't. I think God would have to tell me that. And so he put eternity into our minds, but not so that we would know the beginning from the end. We don't know some of the things that would happen, some of the consequences from our actions if we do things at the wrong time. So it's always good to consult our Heavenly Father. And again, that's the point of all this, that our choices have to depend on what God says. If we don't know the time to do all these things, then who does? Well, of course, it's God. So in the end, then, and I hope you got this out of this talk, we do have choices all the time, and I'm not saying that necessarily every little thing. It is good to ask God to be in our lives each day when we arise. Say, help me to avoid pitfalls like those bitumen pits in the valley of the Jordan. Help me to see things clearly that I maybe thought were good but might lead me in the wrong direction. Help me, Heavenly Father, to just overcome my own weaknesses and see what the right choices are that we make. And then go ahead and hang that little sign somewhere where you can see it. That where Joshua says, you know, I want you to choose this day who you are going to serve. And you can look at that little sign and say, as for me, and we should say, as for me and my house, as much control as we have over our house. But certainly, as for me, I choose to serve the Lord.